Update. I'm Zach Heil.
It's not a story you can go in and just pick and choose, those guys got to be available, and there just wasn't a ton available this year. So we always look at a lot of things, have some conversations, talk to people. Not a lot materialized this year.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
It's amazing how used to the NFL schedule we get this time of year with our team. I'm talking about, it's amazing how used to the Packers schedule we get. They play on Sunday. Matt LaFleur talks on Monday. We react, right? He then talks. Does he talk on Tuesday, take off Wednesday? I can't remember, but players made available on Wednesday. Mike Clemens joins us on the huddle to bring us some of that audio Wednesday night, right? And then we get injury reports. There's a rhythm to it. Right? There's certain things that we come to expect, just like we wake up in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you make some coffee. You just have a routine, right? And it's been a weird week. And the Bucs schedule is lined up in such a way where the last two nights I've gone home and I'm like, there's not even a Bucs game on. Badgers basketball is getting started. They haven't played the last couple nights. They played Monday night against Holy Cross. They played a night against Montana State. The Cats, not the Montana Grizzly, the Cats, commonly confused. I do enjoy a little FCS football. It's a Big Sky Conference. It's beside the point, right? It's been an empty sports week for us so far. The last two nights, I'm just really thankful we have Thursday Night Football on tonight, and it's an awesome game, or it should be an awesome game. It'll be a meaningful game, if nothing else, between two great teams. Sometimes Thursday night games are ugly. Doesn't mean it'll be a bad game. It'll just be a clunky, ugly game between two teams with lots of talent. But thank God we get Thursday Night Football back tonight, because without any Packers press conferences, without any Packers content, and no Bucs games, and no Badger games to boot the last couple nights, it's like, what if you get used to getting content? I'm going through withdrawal a little bit. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you're having an excellent day. I'm glad that you're here. Two aces up our sleeve tonight. Perri Goldstein, Packs What She Said podcast, and I have really enjoyed this season doing every other week Pack a Day with Perri and Andy. So I've been podcasting a little bit with Perri this season. Excited to have her back onto the show for the first time in a bit. I can't remember the last time she was on. Maybe the end of last season. She's going to join us about a half hour. Mike Clemens will be here. We can still rely on Mike Clemens, even on a bye week, to keep us on track, to keep us on schedule, and to keep us fulfilled, or at least our football selves fulfilled. Anything else, you probably got to go elsewhere. But Mike Clemens will certainly help you out with the football. He'll be here at 5:30, leading into Thorson and Heilprin when they take over at 6. So a loaded night. Really excited to get started. I don't often design topics for the show to encourage phone calls. Like when I'm organizing my notes throughout the day, I'm never like, what's going to get people riled up? Right? I don't tweet out poll questions very often. I never feel like we have to have a question that needs to be answered every night, right? Typically at 4 o'clock, we start with what happened last night or what happened today. Let's talk about it. Let's react. And then we're off and running, right? It's very simple. Tonight, a little different. I do have a topic. I have a prompt. I don't know if it's a question. It's more of a thought exercise or a prompt. Call it whatever you want. This isn't that scientific. It's sports talk radio. But I do have a prompt tonight. I have a starting point. The Packers are 6-3 at the bye week, right? I don't know if this is mathematically, technically the halfway point of the season. It's darn close. It's close enough, right? And the Packers are off this week. So let's take this week and probably a little bit of next week too as an opportunity to take stock and evaluate a little bit, right? So I'm going to ask you, and I'll take phone calls in the first segment if you're ready to rip, if you have thoughts on this. Through 9 games, in what ways have the Packers exceeded your offseason expectations, right? In what ways have the Packers surpassed your expectations? In what ways have the Packers been better than you thought, right? Through 9 games, in what ways have the Packers met your offseason expectations, right? What have they done where you've thought, that's exactly what I expected. I thought that was going to happen, and it happened. I thought that player was going to play like this, and they're playing like that, right? In what ways have the Packers just simply met your expectations? What did you nail? What did you get right? And then through 9 games, in what ways have the Packers come up short of your expectations, right? So good, bad, middle of the road. We're taking stock tonight of the Packers through 9 games, 6-3, right? It could be coaches. It could be a side of the ball or a position group. It could be players. It could be an idea. It could be something very abstract, whatever. Have fun with it. Make it your own, right? In what ways have the Packers exceeded or met or failed to meet your expectations? I'm curious. I'll start biggest of big picture. And again, I'll take your calls first segment if you're ready to go and talk Packers. 608-321-1670. Call and text. You can comment on the live stream as well. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, @Wisco Grant, right? The biggest of big picture. They are 6-3. And if you'd have told me before the season that Jordan Love is going to miss 2.5 games before the bye, I think we would have taken 6-3. I think I would have taken 6-3 enthusiastically. I would have taken 6-3 even harder. I would have said yes, even stronger to 6-3 if you told me, hey, they're going to lose week 1 and then Jordan Love's going to get hurt. It's not like they bank a win or 2 or 3 before Jordan Love's injury. They're 0-1, and all of a sudden Malik Willis is starting multiple games in a row, right? So biggest of big picture before we talk about individual players or position groups or coaches or different sides of the ball, right? I think he's gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit this week because the trade deadline and because of the Lions game that was very ugly and frustrating, and there was a lot left to be desired in Sunday's performance. But in the biggest of big pictures, I think 6-3 is pretty terrific given that Jordan Love has missed some games. Heck, even if Jordan Love played all these games, it's not like 6-3 is something to slough off. That's a solid record, especially considering I think they have yet to play their best football. Now, my concern is, are we ever going to see their best football? Maybe this is their best football. Maybe this is just a talented team that doesn't really have an identity, that's kind of rudderless. They can score points and they can put up yards, but they never really get their arms around the thing. Maybe, right? The hope is in the second half of the season coming out of the bye that the focus starts to, focus a little bit. The team gets cleaner and crisper and more efficient, and they get more dialed in, and we start to get a better idea of exactly who they are and what they do and what they don't do. That's the hope. There's no guarantee that'll happen, right? When they lost games in the first half and they lost 3 of them, a lot of folks would say, well, you don't want them playing their best football in the first half. You want them playing their best football when it matters. Agreed. I want the Packers playing their best football in December and hopefully into January. But just because they're playing ugly and sloppy in October doesn't mean they'll automatically get it together later. They could just be an uglyish, sloppy-ish football team that gets in their own way the whole year. And look, at this rate, at this pace, even if they continue to make mistakes and play some sloppy version of football, they still have an awesome shot at making the playoffs. I just don't know if they continue to play like this, if they'll be able to reach the highest height that we had hoped for, which is a deep playoff run and a shot at a Super Bowl. I still think that's all very much on the table. We just need to see this team focus and dial in a little bit. And that's what I'm hoping to see after the bye. So I want to hear from you. In what ways have the Packers surprised you positively? In what ways have they exceeded your expectations? What did you nail perfectly? I thought this player would be this. This player has done that. I thought the defense would be this, and the defense is this. What way have they met your expectations? And then what players or position groups or parts of this team you're like, I thought it'd be better. And I hope it's better after the bye. I want to know how this team is or isn't meeting your expectations through the first portion of their season. They're 6-3 going into the bye. Said I'd go to calls. Let's do it. 608-321-1670 Talking Packers. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills.
Vagabond John. You are
cannot wait.
You have typically been a 5:00 caller recently. This is a fun surprise at the beginning.
Well, you said take calls right away. I love the topic. I was ready to dive into the intricacies of whether or not we should spend NIL money to reduce roster churn in college football, but I think you brought a much better topic today. So
we can get there later. Maybe we'll get into that in the second hour. Who knows?
Tipping my pitches, maybe.
Yeah.
So falling short, I'm going to start worst to best because I think that's just a little bit more positive way to end here. I think falling short. I think first and foremost, I think Jordan Love for me has fallen a little short. I don't think there's really a way to put lipstick on it, right? I mean, yes, he's injured. Yes, he's doing these things. Guess what, guys? He's not going to get younger, right? He is going to have to battle injuries. We've had awesome quarterbacks in Green Bay battle injuries their whole career. I think playing well through injuries, finding ways to adapt your game is going to be important. And if he can't do that, he's not worth the money that we spent, right?
Yeah.
Second thing, just real quick, and I know other callers will mention this too. I think I don't have a lot here. Just the pass rush in general. The pass rush has been disappointing. Meeting expectations. If we're going worst to best here, Marshawn Lloyd not playing. I said it the day he was drafted. We were on this early. You drafted the oldest running back in college football who had health problems in college. It's no surprise to me that he can't stay healthy in the NFL. And he's just a draft pick that is totally not contributing to this team at all in any way, in any fashion yet. Other Met expectations, I did two for each. Defense as a whole, I think they're average in the NFL right now. They're 13th in the league in scoring. I think there's some things they're doing better than last year. I think there's some things they're doing the same. And then exceeded expectations. It's just the free agents, right? I mean, Josh Jacobs.
Literally,
many.
I don't have a ton of things written down, but the first thing that I wrote down under exceeded expectations was Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. And that's a heck of a compliment, Vagabond John, considering they got paid huge money. That's $120 million combined dollars for those two. And yet, I think I've gotten more than expected from both.
And I think it's exceedingly rare. We see, I mean, you saw Melvin Gordon bounce around. You see veteran running backs bounce around all over the place. I think Derrick Henry is the other example this year, obviously. But I think it is pretty rare to see veteran running backs transfer and have such a huge effect. I mean, the dude averaged 7.5 yards per carry on Sunday. Why the hell he only got 13 carries is another conversation. But that plus just generally the defensive backfield, I think has been elite. I think the rookie additions. So the additions to the roster have been a major plus. And then when you look at the pass rush, that's more of the existing players on the roster has been a major minus. So, and then Marshawn Lloyd, we've had that conversation a couple of times. So that's kind of my summary there.
I'm so glad you hit Marshawn Lloyd. That's a good call to start the show, Vagabond John, because when I was kind of lining up how I wanted to start the show, it's like, okay, so it's easy to say who exceeded expectations or who has exceeded expectations and who's come short of expectations. Who met expectations perfectly? That's kind of an odd thing to be able to, hey, I said this about this player, and that's exactly what happened. And then, of course, Vagabond John finds, yeah, I didn't think that this guy could stay healthy, and he hasn't been healthy. Just kind of a funny answer. It's 9 games into his NFL career. So I'm glad that you said he hasn't been able to stay healthy or contribute at all yet. And we hope that changes. They have a nice little running back room right now. The difference between last year's running back room and this year's running back room. Now, running back one, when healthy and productive, while different, I feel that they're both adding a similar amount of value. I think Aaron Jones, healthy at his peak, was adding a lot of value. And I think Josh Jacobs this year's added a lot of value. Part of the calculus of that switch that the Packers made in the offseason is, well, we believe that Josh Jacobs will stay healthier and be at his best more often than Aaron Jones as he ages more. And he's had a great year with the Vikings so far. They haven't shied away from giving him the ball. I don't even want to say, well, we'll see if that continues. We'll see if he stays healthy, because that almost makes it sound like I'm pulling for him to wear down and to get injured or to fall off. And I don't want that for him. I don't want the Vikings to succeed, but I'm not wishing anything against Aaron Jones. I think the rest of the room behind Josh Jacobs has been such an upgrade from last year. Emmanuel Wilson, I don't want to say he's taken a leap, but he's improved a lot, and the Packers have a lot more faith and confidence in using him. And Matt LaFleur's talked about that explicitly in press conferences. That's not even reading between the lines. He said that, yeah, we have a lot more confidence this year than last year. They seem to like Chris Brooks, who is almost splitting the second running back carries with Emmanuel Wilson on Sunday. It'll be interesting to see what happened when Marshawn Lloyd comes back. I want to know, because it's clear they like Wilson and Brooks. Josh Jacobs is a bell cow. I don't know that the Packers need to use him as a bell cow in November and in early December. You want to be able to use him that way when the games matter the most. So lighten the load a little bit. We don't have to prove, you're not out to prove that Josh Jacobs can handle 25 carries a game. We know he can. That doesn't mean he needs to be given 25 carries a game. He's already got his money, right? Let's keep him healthy and fresh as much as possible for when the games matter the most. 608-321-1670. One more call, and then we'll take our first break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Tim from Sparta.
Hey, Tim. What's going on?
Well, I normally never call this early.
No.
But this is like the last 2 times that I have been able to tune into your show, and Vagabond John has been on. I have agreed with everything that he said.
Wow.
And I have to like circle this day and put it down in big red letters. You know, this is just amazing.
God, good for you guys. Don't feed his ego, though. He doesn't need that. I'm glad that you guys are getting along and agreeing, but we don't need to. He doesn't need this.
Yes, I understand. However, the truth is the truth.
Yeah. I suppose.
The thing that has impressed me the most this year is Green Bay's two safeties. I thought Xavier was going to be good. I didn't think he's going to be this good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just completely amazing. And the other guy, the rookie back there, where did he come from?
Evan Williams, you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
He's been a find. The biggest disappointment, obviously, along the defensive line. Kenny Clark is appearing to be not the guy he has been.
Yeah, Kenny Clark is probably at the top of that list. I hadn't mentioned him. We just kind of lumped it, the pass rush. But Kenny Clark has been as steady of a quantity. I mean, he's as reliable of a stock on the stock market. But you can buy Kenny Clark stock every year, and you're always going to get your money back and then some. This is the first year where I'm like, man, he hasn't really delivered yet. Hopefully that changes.
No, he has not, and I'm glad that they got rid of Smith. To be honest with you, I thought that they should have gotten rid of him last year. I understand why they couldn't. I think that giving Van Ness and Brooks and Ngari and whoever else there's some more reps on the outside.
Yeah,
is hopefully is going to help because if there's one thing that's holding that defense back besides Quay Walker's inability to tackle a running back is the lack of the pass rush, and I think we can all see that. So
yeah,
those are my thoughts, and I hope that you have a very good evening, Grant.
You as well, Tim. I appreciate the call, and hey, facts are facts. Just because it's going to feed Vagabond John's ego, I guess that's the way of the road. Rick comments on the live stream: players don't fit the scheme. Preston Smith didn't. I'm not letting Kenny Clark and Jeff Hafley off the hook. It's not a scheme fit. He's as successful and proven of a playmaking nose tackle as there is in the league. Like if your defensive scheme can't find a way to be useful with that player, then you need to adjust the scheme. Preston Smith, I get it. A stand-up defensive end versus a guy with his hand in the ground, 4-3-3-4, especially as he's aging. I get that. That makes sense. And I'm glad that he's going somewhere where he'll probably have a little bit more success and probably be a better fit. I don't accept scheme as an excuse for Kenny Clark. It's like, oh, my scheme can't use Kenny Clark. Well, then adjust your scheme because that's a good player who's been a good player for a long time under multiple defensive coordinators. Find a way to make it work. So I'm Kenny Clark's at the top of my list too for lots of reasons. Let's take a 3-minute break. We'll continue the Wisco Sports Show next. More of your Packers thoughts after the break.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
To be honest, a few weeks ago, I requested a trade. I didn't feel like I was being useful in the system, and it wasn't catering to my play style. And moving forward, like I wasn't surprised when I got the call. It's like, I got what I asked for, and I'm at a great place with some great teammates. And, I'm excited for a new start, and I'm excited for the rest of this journey for this season.
As Preston Smith at Pittsburgh yesterday, I know we talked a little bit last night about how he actually requested a trade. Mentioned that in his presser yesterday in Pittsburgh. There's the actual comment. I am 99% thrilled for the guy. He was a great Packer. I wish him nothing but the best. I'd be lying to you if I told you that one part of that answer didn't stick in my craw a little bit when he's like, I didn't feel like the scheme was catering to me. Oh, sorry. Player one of a total of 53 on the roster. The defensive coordinator was not staying up late at night. How can I cater? How can I tailor make my defense for him? But I get it. It's just that word and that phrasing sticks with me a little. But it's like 1%. 99%, 99.5%. Thrilled for the guy. I think it makes sense for both parties. The Packers are probably like, well, honestly, Preston, we'd love to give off your money. And you're not really doing much here anyways. And I think part of that was scheme related. He's also aging. He's a rotational pass rusher, right? And he's not playing the type of pass rushing snaps or the type of pass rushing position that's most conducive to his skill set, especially now as he ages. He doesn't want to just become a piece of furniture in a deep Green Bay pass rushing room. Send him somewhere like Pittsburgh. It'll be perfect. It's a great fit for him. I'm excited to watch. And I keep telling you, I'm kind of in on the Steelers more than I ever have been in recent years. Normally they annoy the hell out of me, but this Steelers team is kind of fun. I like the Steelers team. Rick from Spencer texts in. Says, I expected more from Lucas Van Ness and Wicks. Reed never ceases to exceed expectations. I know I like Reed. Reed is an expectations exceeder, and we had pretty lofty expectations for Jaden Reed. Dontavian Wicks is a maddening player through 2 years. He gets open as effectively as quite literally just about any wide receiver in the league. If you look at separation and win rate at the line of scrimmage and how quickly he gets open and how often he's open, it's astounding. Like, he is maybe the most, or one of the most, but very close to the most effective separator in the NFL. And I think that's a pretty important part of playing wide receiver. Can you get open? Jump ball wide receivers are great, right? Straight line speed wide receivers are great. Those skill sets have their place. Can you get open? Can you shake the defender and make yourself available and give the quarterback an opportunity to get you the ball without putting it through a tiny little window? Wicks does that. It's everything else that he's not great at so far. He's got to figure out the rest of the stuff. Not dissimilar to Devontae Adams. The comparisons are almost perfect to a fault, where it's like, oh, in year 2, you're going to get open, but that's actually going to be a bad thing for you because that means you're going to get the ball a lot, and it's very clear that you're not ready to catch it reliably. Kenny Clark, we're talking about players or parts of this team that have exceeded or met or failed to meet expectations. Kenny Clark is one that has not met my expectations this year. And people have said, well, the scheme's not a good fit. I am no football coach. I'm no Mike Tressel here. All right. But I would struggle to find a scheme in the NFL. I would struggle to find a defensive coordinator in the NFL who would think, actually, Kenny Clark, he's great, but not for me. Not my thing. They go playmaking nose tackle that can rush the passer a little bit, stop the run a little bit, can eat up double teams a little bit. can line up with some variation along the line. Your scheme, no spot in there for your scheme. Okay, interesting. I would be very skeptical of a defensive coordinator saying, actually, Kenny Clark, I know he's great and he's been great for a while, just not my thing, not for me. Okay, well, I think that might be a you thing. So, has Kenny Clark regressed? Is he not the same player that he was? Would have fallen off an absolute cliff this offseason. If so, he was excellent last year. I just don't think it's a scheme thing. Andy Herman put up his grades for this week. His full grades from week 9, his top 3, Xavier McKinney, Carrington Valentine, and Aaron Mosby. His bottom 3, Eric Wilson, Kenny Clark, and Lucas Van Ness. One of those things is not like the other two. Lucas Van Ness is a second-year player, very raw. Eric Wilson is a rotational linebacker who isn't really a complete player, but gives some nice utility in certain spots. Kenny Clark is as stable of a stock as you'll find. He's a blue chipper, right? You would buy Kenny Clark stock if you were retiring. I'm just going to buy it, let it sit. I know it's going to do well for me. And yet this year, not only has he been like non-existent, he's actively been bad in most of these games. We'll take a call and then we'll go to break. Perri Goldstein, Packs What She Said podcast, going to join us after 4:30. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, Wisco Chad here.
How's Sun Prairie, Wisco Chad?
Oh, great. Well,
Good.
Right now we're in between. We're in East Madison.
Okay. So Pertnier, you're right next to Sun Prairie. Gotcha.
Near, on the move.
Pertnier, gotcha. Or what do you think?
I think that it's really hard to make a true evaluation of this team until they actually get to practice with their starting quarterback, more than 25% of the time.
Matthew Collar hinted at this last night too, and he's like, it's hard to get the cadence dialed down and the route running down when your quarterback is in and out, snip, snap, snips out. And I think that's a good point. I also agree with Vagabond John that like, hey, guys are going to get injured. Guys are always dealing with something, and Jordan Love personally has to be able to deal with injuries and still not throw stupid pick sixes, right? But for the whole team, that you're absolutely right. Yes.
But that's on the coaching staff. He couldn't protect himself. He shouldn't have been out there.
I mean, if you've listened to the show at all this week, I don't buy into that for a sec. He looked fine to me.
He did not look fine on that play. He threw the awful pick. He looked like he was going to get destroyed. He panicked.
Well, it was a screen, so the pass rusher's coming through by design a little bit. Throw the ball away.
Yeah. Again, he looked like he was going to get destroyed. He got caught in limbo land where he didn't want to use the leg. He didn't want to push it off.
He didn't need to use his legs. Throw the ball out of bounds. We're just not going to agree, and that's fine. That's 100% fine.
Well, I mean, you're a little young to remember watching Brett do that live, and it was maddening when he would do that stuff too. But there were times when Brett hurt his ankles and taped them up and played games. One particular against LeVar Arrington decided to try to tear his leg off against the Washington Redskins. And, he came back the next weekend. I think he played against the Eagles. And same deal, Brett was making stupid plays because he was worried about his ankle. Granted, you can do that, but when it's in the back of your mind and you play your game a certain way, you start to alter that game because of the injury. That should have been a coaching staff decision. Willis should have went in.
I just don't agree. I don't.
Okay.
Because he threw an equally bad pick six in LA when he was healthy. I think he's looked healthy just about every time he's been out there, other than maybe a little bit against the Vikings early on. But even by the end of the game, he had that figured out. Like I'm not blaming these awful decisions on his groin. I think that's letting him off the hook. I think that's ignoring a bigger problem.
He looks like the Statue of Liberty back there. He is not healthy.
Well, he's a pocket passer.
He is not the Jordan. Yeah, you say he's a pocket passer. They're trying to be more pocket passer. But Jordan Love's game last year also included the dual threat to a degree. He doesn't want to get his head taken off, and he's smart enough to know that maybe he doesn't have the legs of a Lamar, obviously, or some of the other guys that can move.
Sure.
But he still has the ability, or had the ability. It's not there. They didn't have to respect it. The Lions did not have to respect it at all, and they knew that.
Look, some of the things that you're saying, Chad, they're well and fine, and I agree. I just, in a grander sense, I've had a lot of Packers fans this week explaining away interceptions as a result of his injury, and I don't think that's correct. And I think it's ignoring a larger problem of when Jordan Love gets a little freaked out, he throws dumb passes. And I don't think that's related to his grunt. We got to run. Sorry, Chad. I would have loved to talk to her for a minute or more. Enjoy East Madison. Perri Goldstein, Pax What She Said podcast, going to join us to talk Packers next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think there's more consistency and maybe a little bit better in, situational football. I think to be the kind of team that can go deep into the playoffs and it can contend for championships, that you have to be that kind of team. We're working towards that. And I think these guys, have had really good moments, but you got to be consistent with that. You got to be able to call upon that. I think you evolve as a team every single year, and you have to work towards that to play your best football at the end of the season. There's times I think we've had teams here in the past that maybe have come out and played really good football early and then faded at the end. We had a team last year that really came on strong towards the end of the season, and I really liked the way Matt, kind of handled the team and the way we got better week in and week out, and we're really playing our best football at the end of the season, and that's kind of what I expect this year. I think these guys are working. I think they worked the right way, made the right stuff. Again, they got to go do it, but I'm excited for the second half.
That's Brian Gutekunst about why this year's team is better than last year's team. The situational stuff, I agree with. You could argue they have 2 wins because of their situational execution down the stretch. The Jacksonville game and the Texans game, those are 2 wins I think they certainly wouldn't have had last year, especially in the first half. It's funny that he cites consistencies, like this team is more consistent. Well, I think that's more of an indictment on last year's team than a compliment of this year's team, because I still don't think they're very consistent. They have a long ways to go in that department. Perri Goldstein, nothing but consistent. You can hear on the She Said podcast, Pack Day podcast with Andy Herman as well, which I've been doing with her. That's very fun. Perri, hello, welcome back to the show.
It's so good to be back on the radio with you. I've gotten used to podcasting with you, which is not our norm. So we're back in our element right now.
I know this is much better. This is the way things should be. We've been positive. Well, I tried to start the show positive tonight because there was so much nitpicking after the Lions game. But now as we get further into the bye, it's like, well, they're 6-3 and their quarterback hasn't been healthy. So tell me about the different parts, the players, the position groups, the parts of this team that have met or exceeded your expectations, because they're 6-3 at the bye. And I think we should talk about the good stuff before we nitpick.
Met or exceeded. There's tons. I think the majority of the team has met or exceeded my expectations. And like, to your point, they're 6-3 for a reason, right? The big free agents they brought in have completely exceeded my expectations. And I think sometimes when you make those big splash signings, you have those lofty expectations and then the players don't always live up to them. And I think Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney have not just lived up to them, but exceeded them. I mean, they're everything we hoped they would be and more, in terms of execution, but also leadership on both sides of the ball. The young guys look awesome, from second-year players like Tucker Kraft to some of the rookies like Edgerrin Cooper. And I know Javon Bullard maybe had a tougher game, but he's starting as a rookie. Evan Williams as a 4th rounder, right? He's missed on the field being hurt. I mean, how many rookies can you say that about? So the young guys having to step up and fill really big gaps have totally exceeded my expectations, quite frankly. I have low. I mean, you can be high on the pick and know that in the future they will be great and not have high expectations for them in like year 1. And they've totally exceeded my expectations, right?
Well, it's hard. They got $120 combined million this offseason. So to say that those 2 players have exceeded expectations, I think that's, I just think that's high praise. And I agree with you, which means that those 2 signings have been excellent so far.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, Xavier McKinney is one of the best ranked safeties in the league, if not number 1. I just saw an Athletic article out that he's probably going to be named first team All-Pro. So if you're not, I don't know what else you can do to exceed expectations than that. And Josh Jacobs has been a workhorse for this offense. I think you have potentially 2 losses in that column, if not for his ability to just put the team on his back and run like there's no tomorrow. And the Packers have one of the best rushing games in the league this season, due in part, obviously, to him and his ability to make big explosives and also just get your tough yards out of nothing. And also in part to like the fact that the offensive line has actually been playing pretty well.
I think now, especially if Marshawn Lloyd can come back healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if for the next month they actually back off Josh Jacobs' usage because he just got paid. Like, I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to bang the table and be like, no, I want the ball 26 times a game. He got his big contract and he wants to be healthy. I mean, maybe he does want the ball because he's a psycho. And maybe part of the job of the coaches is to be like, actually, we're not going to do that. Like, that's not what's best for you. They seem to really like Chris Brooks too. Like, this running back room is just so much deeper. And I'm very pleased with where it is because coming into this year, it was still Josh Jacobs and who knows. And the who knows over the last 9 games has actually become pretty solid, which is a area of the offense last year that was really lacking.
Yeah, the run. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the rest of the group because Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks look great. I'm excited about Marshawn Lloyd. I was excited about him after the draft. I am tempered a little bit in my expectations only because he is coming off a very lengthy stint on IR, and I don't know how much they're going to work him into the rotation. And you have to be able to pass pro in that room in order to get any meaningful snaps. You're not going to get put on the field unless you can do that. So I don't know what he looks like in those situations, and I guess we'll find out.
I like the meme. I want to talk about the wide receivers. And I think most of them have met expectations. Nobody's really blown me away. I think Dobbs has very quietly taken a nice step. He's just not a sexy player, and he's certainly not going to promote himself. Dontavian Wicks, in a weird way, kind of reminds me of the meme that was going around where it's like I accidentally became important at work, and it's actually kind of sucked. Like Dontavian Wicks gets open too well for the rest of his skill set. Like he gets open too much for his own good. He's so good at getting open. It's just it's the rest of everything else because he gets open as good as anybody, but he just doesn't catch it often enough. And I think that's been disappointing through 9 weeks. And I think he'd say the same.
I think he'll get there. I think his route running ability and his, to your point, ability to get open is too good for him not to just be able to catch the ball. Like I do think it's a little bit of like Devontae Adams-ism. So I hope he gets there. I know I say this because the expectations were high, but like Jaden Reed has already passed his yardage from last season at this point to this point in the season. So like talking about exceeding expectations. But in terms of pass catchers that I'm like just obsessed with, I know that's not very analytical of me, but like Tucker Kraft exceeding expectations. I mean, 2nd-year tight end wasn't even supposed to be the guy. Like wasn't even supposed to be tight end 1. We were supposed to have that like 1-2 punch at tight end, and then Luke Musgrave unfortunately gets hurt, and he is now the guy, and he is doing everything right. Every single important play that happens in the Packers offense happens because of or Tucker Kraft is involved with that play. It's remarkable. And he's one of the best tight ends in the league in pretty much every major metric you can look at, and between catches, yards after the catch. He's the 2nd best tight end in the league in yards after the catch. I mean, he passes the eye test. You don't really have to look at the stats, but tight end's a hard position to acclimate to in the NFL, right? And for him to be able to do it from a small school program this quickly is really impressive.
Well, and he just needed some run last year. Like Luke Musgrave getting hurt was probably the best thing that could have happened for Tucker Kraft and for the Packers, because he's like, all right, you're the guy, like for better or worse, you're going to be our tight end 1 for the next month. And eventually he just put it all together. I love that he doesn't go down to defensive backs. I love that you can throw him the ball in the flat, and it feels like 9 out of 10 times is going to break that. And I don't mean to compliment one player by ripping on another, but just the absolute opposite of everything that Richard Rodgers ever was. Where he would throw the swing pass and he would just go down instantly. And it's like, okay. Like Kraft, he's talked specifically this year, like openly about, I get angry when I let defensive backs tackle me in space. I think that's a weapon on 2nd and 6 when you can give him the ball in 1-on-1 and he can run for 8 yards and move the sticks just by himself.
Yeah. And he's shifty too. Like he's obviously a big body, and big body tight ends, to your point, can maybe like stiff arm a guy or break a tackle or two, but to be able to tiptoe down the line and be as like maneuver his way, is also incredibly impressive. So he's got like very dynamic skills.
Perri Goldstein is here. Packs What She Said podcast. Back to the defense. A player who has not met expectations. This is maybe the easiest one. Is Kenny Clark. And here's what I don't get. And I was talking with some callers about this before the break. So Preston Smith isn't a great scheme fit. And at his age and at the money that he was making, I think that trade made sense for everyone involved. Wish him nothing but the best. Really good Packer for what they got out of him since 2019 when they signed him. Not a scheme fit, 4-3-3-4, got it. I don't understand how a player like Kenny Clark just doesn't work in some schemes. Like if a defensive coordinator told me, all right, Kenny Clark's great, but just not for me. Like I can't do like, well, okay, well then your scheme is wrong because he can do a little bit of everything and has been such a known quantity. So what's going on there in your view?
I actually wish I could tell you. I don't really understand what's going on with the pass rush, like period. Interior, exterior, well, all of it. I don't understand because the defense as a whole, I think is operating quite well. And it's not to say like when you look at the numbers after the games, right? It's not to say that they're not getting pressures and they're not getting QB hit. You know, they're not generating it, but it just when you're watching the game, it doesn't look like they are.
No.
Right. And so I still haven't figured out how to reconcile that. Kenny usually comes on in the second half of the season. So I want to see him do that, you know, this November, this December, hopefully this January. And if he does, then I'll feel better and I'll kind of forgive this early part of the season as, I don't know, acclimating to new scheme, rotating. I don't know. If not, then questions. Yeah.
I don't get it. He's always been a player who ebbs and flows. Like you'll see him coming on for 3 or 4 weeks and then it'll kind of peak with an awesome game. And then he might like tweak an ankle or something. And then the process starts over again and you see him heating back up. Like, and when you say a player is streaky, it sounds like such a negative. It's not. You can just see kind of the cycles over the course of a season with Kenny Clark normally.
I want to ask you, like, the Packers lost Devontae Wyatt, who is having a great start to the season. Did that like my question is more like is that tandem, do they really play off of each other? And having Wyatt back now, are they going to really assist each other in actually like getting real interior pressure?
I hope so, because Wyatt's like a legit explosive pass rusher. He's not a guy who's like, well, he'll eat double teams and do the dirty. Like he's a player that a defensive coordinator needs to account for, because he'll blow up and be in the backfield and he will blow up plays and possession. So maybe that helps. Just kind of that like Tasmanian devil next to Kenny Clark. I don't know. Kenny Clark's it's not like he's been on elite defensive lines his whole career, though. That's what I don't get. It's not like he was next to, I don't know, Vita Vea for 5 years and all of a sudden that guy's gone. You know what I mean? And I'm probably underselling certain Packers defensive linemen, but you get my point, right? Like he's stood on his own merit for a long time. The Wyatt spin is an interesting one, though. I think more about that. I don't know. Perri Goldstein is here. Like I said, Pack's what she said. And you can hear on Pack a Day too. We do some stuff with Andy. Matt LaFleur, let's close with him. I think his scheme is brilliant, and it's funny. He's gotten the most praise this season when Jordan Love hasn't been playing. And when Jordan Love has been playing, it's like we kind of stopped talking about him. Or not we, but like when I listen to other shows that kind of hit on all teams, LaFleur got a lot of love from Malik Willis. I think the scheme is as good as ever. How do we look at all the penalties and the mental mistakes? Because that ultimately falls on a head coach too. I'm not trying to blame him. I'm trying to, how do we organize how we feel about him? How do we, to use your word, how do we reconcile that?
I don't weigh it all that much against all the great that he does. Now, obviously it falls on him, right? He has to get his guys ready. He needs to drill into them, like, you know, all the necessities and clean things up, etc. But at the end of the day, he's not the one out there jumping, you know, on a false start. And he's not the one out there tugging on a jersey, right? This is execution. So I feel like this is a little bit on the players. And I don't know. To me, like this stuff, I'm like, we got like they're young. I don't know what it is. But it is fixable. Therefore, I'm not as concerned.
It's fixable. Now in week 9, I'm getting a little more concerned. You know what I mean? Like, I don't just want to say it'll get fixed week by week as it doesn't get fixed. I think if Jordan Love could just play 5 straight games without incident, without going in or out, like the cadences become a little bit more routine. Everything becomes more routine.
This team is certainly a rhythm team. Like, I think they're really resilient, which is definitely a kudos to Matt and his coaching and like just what he's fostered in the locker room in terms of like mindset, headspace, the way they handle themselves, etc. And so for them to go down in some games and be able to claw their way back, and I never give up on this team until it's 0-0. Like genuinely, even in the Lions game, even in the Vikings game, like watching them fight their way back. And I think that to me says more about him as a head coach and this team and who they are than really stupid penalties.
Lastly, we got about 2 minutes. I think Jair gets an unfair rap from a lot of Packers fans because he's kooky. I'm scared to death that he's going to get hurt and not be available for a playoff run, though. And I'm not saying that's personally his fault, but the data over the last couple seasons, it's like my nightmare is they get hot in December and we're like, holy crap, this team looks like a team that could do it. And then he pulls a hammy in practice and misses a wild card game and a divisional round game. And that's my fear. And I don't know that I have a ton of faith in the guys behind him or next to him.
I think you hit the nail on the head with what you finished up that sentence with. Look, I don't know what to say about injuries, right? We had this statement about Christian Watson, and then this season he's looked really good, right? Like injuries suck and injuries are fluky. And I know we're going to knock on a lot of wood right now. I think Jair would do anything humanly possible to be on the field as much as he can. And I don't play the blame game at all. Now, yeah, I think when you play the game as aggressively as he does, and you're a smaller corner, you might be more injury prone. And that's just maybe the trade-off we get with someone who has his play style that we know and love, and like the reason why he was a first round pick. And it's just like the trade-off, right? You don't want him to miss, to your point, a really important game, but also at the same time, this whole defense cannot hinge upon him being in or out, right? The Packers won a Super Bowl without Charles Woodson. Like they need to have other boundary corners that don't give up like every single catch for entire drives. Like that also needs to be a thing. So it's both, right? It's how do the trainers keep Jair healthy based on his play style and his body type, but also who is backing him up and like what does the depth there look like?
Of course. And Goody seems to really like the secondary, this corner group specifically. I hope he's right. I hope he's right. I like some of them. If you got to go up against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison in a wild card game or Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's my fear. And look, you're always going to have fears about sports because we never know how any of this is going to go. So I'm just venting and complaining basically at this point. Perri, let's do this again. I appreciate it. We do Pack a Day on Sunday. I'll talk to you Sunday night, right?
Sounds great. Can't wait.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Perri. Have a good one. Perri Goldstein, Packs What She Said podcast. Appreciate her always. And I like podcasting with her and Andy. So Rick texted, was it Rick texted in or I can't remember who did it. Wondering if our podcast with Andy is like an exclusive thing for members. No, it's on the main Pack a Day feed every other Sunday. So you can find it there. 3 minutes. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1, the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Appreciate you listening. Hour 2, just minutes away. We're going to get an update at 5 o'clock from Zach Heilprin. The latest on the Packers. Badgers basketball hosting Montana State tonight. The Bobcats. Looking forward to that. The last 2 nights have been dead. I actually did enjoy Celtics Warriors last night. I always enjoy a good Celtics hate watch. And the Celtics fans were so excited to boo Steve Kerr. Oh, you sat Jason Tatum during the Olympics. Well, won a gold medal doing it. And then it looked early on in that Celtics game last night that Kerr and the Warriors were just going to blitz Tatum and not let Tatum beat them. And I saw the Celtics people on Twitter, oh, Kerr would rather get blown out than let Jason Tatum beat him. Oh, so you're telling me the Warriors win last night? He handled Jason Tatum correctly again? Okay. So I did enjoy that last night. Other than that little hate watch of Celtics Warriors. Last 2 nights have been a total bust. We'll continue talking Packers. I want to hear parts of the team or players that have met or exceeded or come up short of your expectations. We'll also hear from Mike Clemens at 5:35. First, 2-minute update from Zach Heilprin. No commercials. Be right back.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Bucs will look to snap their 6-game losing streak tonight as the Utah Jazz come to Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee won its season opener, but has not won since to sit at 1-6. Only 12 teams in NBA history, less than 1%, have started 1-6 or 0-7 and made the playoffs. Tip tonight is at 7. Turning to the Badgers, they're going to play game number 2 of their season tonight as Montana State comes to the Kohl Center. Badgers took their opener over Holy Cross 85-61, despite trailing by 16 in the first half. One big reason they overcame the deficit, John Tanji, the transfer, scored a game-high 23 points for Wisconsin. Tanji is in his 6th year of college ball with injuries derailing what should have been his senior season a year ago. That experience is what stands out to teammates, including sophomore Nolan Winter.
Age. He's old. He's the dad of the team. He's living here. He's drinking coffee in the morning. So he just brings that veteran presence to the squad, obviously, on the court. Having him out there, he's been around a time or two. So he brings shooting. I mean, we see it tonight. Great shooter. He can get to the free throw line whenever he wants. It's always good to have a guy like that on the court that, can slow it down for us, get him the rock, and just let him operate. He's fun to play with for sure.
Again, it'll be Wisconsin and Montana State tonight. Tip is set for 7.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
You're grateful for all the ways technology can connect us. Unfortunately, there are online scammers who want to take advantage. Malicious viruses, phishing scams, and identity theft are more prevalent than ever. That's why Rural Mutual includes cybersecurity protection as an option on every policy.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Packers and Badgers are both on their bye weeks. Green Bay going to return for the bye next weekend to face Chicago at Soldier Field. Wisconsin going to look to snap a 2-game losing streak when number 1 Oregon visits Madison. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
It's not a store you can go in and just pick and choose, Those guys got to be available, and there just wasn't a ton available this year. So we always look at a lot of things, have some conversations, talk to people. Not a lot materialized this year.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I want to get back to talking Packers, but a little Brewers news or Brewers adjacent. Well, some actual news from the Brewers earlier today. They announced a big concert coming up at American Family Field in April. Billy Joel and Sting. Might have to get tickets. They go on sale next week. I was singing scenes from an Italian restaurant all day. A bottle of white. I can do that in the car on the way home. Actual Brewers adjacent news. It sounds as though the Mets are into Willy Adames. According to Mike Rodriguez, well, specifically according to the sources of Mike Rodriguez, who's an MLB insider, the Mets have made an offer of over $160 million for a period of 7 years to Willy Adames. Their intention for him is to play third base, however. Adames is not convinced, as he prefers to continue in the shortstop position. He's not made a decision yet, and so far he also has a proposal from the Dodgers. So, yes, the big money teams are interested. None of that is surprising. The Mets, a little bit more surprising than the Dodgers, but in the end, neither surprising at all. This is the Wisco Sports Show. I want to get back to the Packers talk. If you have a baseball thought, I'm not going to turn you away, but we've been, during the bye week here, talking about how this team has exceeded expectations, met expectations, come up short of expectations. We're taking stock of this team that's 6-3 through 9 weeks at the bye. And honestly, if you would have told me before the season that they would be 6-3 with Jordan Love missing a couple of games after losing week 1 to the Eagles in Brazil, I would have taken it. Now, we got plenty of things to nitpick. The types of performances that they turned in against the Vikings and the Lions, and a lot of the mistakes and dumb things and the turnovers by Jordan Love, totally. But in the biggest of pictures, I think we're sitting here in an okay spot, better than an okay spot during the Week 10 bye. 608-321-1670. Back to your phone calls. Wisco Sports Show. Hello, who's this?
Hey, Grant.
Hey,
Tony from Texas. How are you?
I am excellent, Tony. How are you this evening?
Good. Hey, my mom's going to be upset if Willie goes to the Mets. She loves Willy Adames.
Good-looking player. And just another in a long line of good-looking Brewers players. Ryan Braun, Carlos Gomez, just to name a couple others.
Oh, don't forget about J.J. Hardy. J.J. Hardy is a ladies.
How could I? The ladies love J.J. Hardy.
Yeah. Well, I love the trenches. I love football. I love the trenches. The war of attrition in the middle. And I got to say, that Packer offensive line, they have exceeded my expectations. I don't know the facts. I don't know the stats, but this line is producing the numbers that I think we haven't seen since the last 40 years. Is that true? Do you have the numbers where they stand with running the ball? They're just
running the ball. I think this is the best run blocking, road grading Packers offensive line in a while. I don't even know what numbers that we would begin to look up. Maybe I can work on that for tomorrow. But this is a heftier offensive line. This is not a skinny athlete pass rush offensive line, at least not quite as extreme as maybe we've seen them go with offensive lines like that in the Rodgers era. This is a little bit of a meaner and nastier group for sure.
Yeah, and we've begged on Josh Myers before because they passed on Creed Humphrey. But I got to say, Josh Myers, I think, has proven himself a little bit, and then we missed him this past week. Now they've been healthy. Jordan Morgan's starting to get more time. I really got to say that offensive line's exceeded expectations. When you got guys like who's this Brooks and then Wilson are out there running, they're doing something right. So offensive line exceeded my expectations. I will say disappointing. It's got to go to Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. I know you and Cone, we were all over that in preseason.
We were okay. All over what in preseason? Van Ness?
That was a concerned position where we just didn't know what we were going to get for sure. We were hoping Van Ness would make that year 2 jump. Gary was coming off that injury. It was just kind of an unknown.
Yeah, I think personally, I blame Cone for this. I blame Cone for getting my hopes up on Lucas Van Ness because hey, toolsy, athletic as heck pass rusher in a deep room, right? Like he doesn't have to play too many snaps. He's got good guys around him. Right. It just hasn't worked at all this year. And maybe if Cone wouldn't have jacked my expectations up so high, it's not a player that I'd be so worried about and frustrated with.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of getting their expectations too high, hey, I got to get that Perri Goldstein's phone number. Can you help me out a little bit? I want to Packer tickets, maybe black Kohler, a little wine and dining,
Yeah,
anyway,
hold on. I'll get that to you.
Throw it past her, Grant, and, do a solid for a brother.
Yeah, I'll get right on that, Tony. Hold on. You just sit over there on hold. Thanks for Thanks for the call. I'll get right on that for you, Tony. Shoot her a tweet. Shoot your shot. Texas and New York. She lives in New York City, by the way. What? 3-hour flight? Not even nothing for a man of your means, Tony. I know you're traveling to recruit for your highly successful AAU team as well. So you're probably in New York. You're probably going to Rutgers Park to scout players this weekend. You'd be up there. Hit her up. Shoot her a DM. I'm sure she would absolutely love that. 608-321-1670. One more call, and then I'll give you some more of my thoughts. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Grant. Hard charging. Down I-90.
Good.
Beautiful Thursday night.
Well, and I heard today from a couple of friends who I talked to or group chats, like, it's so nice out today. Eric, you and me, we wouldn't know. We were nose to the grindstone in our office, in our where we were working.
Right.
I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you what the weather was today. I was so preoccupied on the task at hand, my job, my passion, my life, really.
Right. I'm getting out here today and enjoying just a little bit of it. Did you watch Survivor last night?
I didn't, so don't spoil. We're watching tonight. We ran out of gas. It was like 9 o'clock and we hadn't started it yet. Is it good?
I think so. I think it was a good one. Yeah. So I'm not gonna ruin it for her. I think it's an excellent one. I think it's an excellent one.
Last week was pretty crazy. I felt really bad for what's her face, but also when she had a chance before the tribes merged, she was pretty quick to throw her tribe mates under the bus in front of everyone else, and I think that came back to bite her. What was her name? Tiana?
Right.
I can't even remember. I'm not going to Google it. I'll
Yeah,
see a spoiler.
Yeah, once they get voted off, they're done. We don't even remember them.
I felt so bad for Rachel, though, last week. She ended up in a group with 4 other Tukus or whatever. I felt bad for her. But Saul, I've been waiting for Saul to have a redeeming moment, and he finally did, and he helped her out. That was a nice moment last week.
I will say this, that after tonight, and I don't think this is too much, I think that Saul,
Soul, S-O-L.
Soul.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's sitting in a pretty good spot right now after last night. So that's all I'm going to say.
Interesting.
Yeah, your topic. I'm disappointed in everybody on the Packers.
Why?
They're doing so good.
As a Vikings fan.
Good.
Do you think, hey, we picked to let's do a Vikings minute for a sec. So Bill and I were picking Vikings Jags. Are you comfortable and confident saying that your Vikings will cover a touchdown down in Jacksonville, even against Mac Jones? They've looked a little shakier the last couple of weeks.
The Vikings are going to win by 14.
You think so?
They're going to win by 14 this week and next week. I think that they're clearly the better team. And I think that we're playing the 3 worst teams in the NFL. I mean, the numbers just don't add up for
Colts,
me.
Jags, and then do you have the Titans after that?
Right. We're kind of getting this, you guys had this little run earlier,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I'm extremely I'm not disappointed in anything about the Vikings, to tell you the truth. It's been, everything's just a win to us. It's all house money.
Yeah.
Right.
Although now, I
think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you.
The one thing I'm just going to caution you on, and we've made regression to the mean a big topic, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
I think Jordan Love last year in that Thanksgiving to the end of the year run made a number of throws similar to the throws that he's made this year that were bad. And they worked out last year. I think if you went back and looked at those games, I think of them too. You're like, it just went kind of like 300 feet in the air and just happened to come down to a Green Bay Packer player.
There was that throw to Dobbs that I can remember on 4th down. Was that against the Chiefs? I think maybe. Yeah.
The throws.
Yeah.
And I think that those are just regressing back to the mean. Right? Some of them are just not working out now.
Yeah. I think they're
not good throws.
Yeah. I think there's some truth to that. Let's talk about that a little bit, Eric. I appreciate the call. Drive safe. The beautiful Thursday night out on Interstate I-90. You have me bought into that. It sounds lovely, and I'm jealous. There were some throws. That throw in traffic to Jaden Reed in Detroit, where I'm still not even really sure how he completed that. I think it went for a touchdown early on. That's a ball that could get batted around. That's a ball that we've seen passes like that this year get intercepted, and that'll happen. I think of that teardrop throw that just fell in a bucket for Romeo Doubs in between 4 defenders. That's a ball that could go either way. And a ball like that went his way to Jaden Reed against the Rams earlier this year. That ball that was kind of into triple coverage, but it was just so perfectly thrown, and Reed read it so well that it ended up working out. Those are the types of interceptions, those tight window throws, where in certain circumstances, I'm okay with them. Because 50% of the time you're going to get a huge play, and it might get batted down and it might get picked. The picks this year, look, if you get rid of Jordan Love's pick 6 against the Rams and you get rid of his pick 6 against the Lions, I'm mostly fine with it. Like those are the two. Those 2 throws scared the living daylights out of me, because if you're in a playoff game and you're up 10-3, or you're up 13-7 or 14-3, and you're going into halftime and you have the ball and you have a chance to go get 3 or 7 before halftime and really grab a hold of a wild card round game or a division round game, and you uncork one like that and you give the other team a free 6 points, I just, those throws are really hard to get out of my head. And he didn't make throws like that down the stretch last year. The throw stumbling out of the back of the end zone, and then whatever he did going into halftime against the Lions. He didn't have throws like that down the stretch last year. He had throws that were into traffic and throws that had a little gusto, right? Some cojones behind him. And those are okay in the right spots. That's a conversation of time and place. The 2 pick 6s, in no circumstances can those types of throws ever be made, let alone in playoff games or in meaningful games down the year, let alone in a random game against the Rams in October. Just can't have it. 608-321-1670. More of your Packers takes. Wisco Sports Show. Hello, who's this?
Hey, Grant. It's Darnell.
Darnell the Chump. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. To get back to a little bit of a more positive spin on those, especially those 2 Jordan Love pick 6s, just devastating plays in their respective games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would still, I know that he's a 4th, 5th year guy out of college at this point, but he's still a 2nd year starter, right?
Yep.
Don't you have to you have to expect some stuff like that to still happen, right?
Sure.
Like those are, I would attribute both of the pick 6s to absurd, dreadful decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like throw the ball away on both.
Yeah, there's nothing unlucky. There's nothing unlucky about either one of those throws. You can't attribute those to injury or luck or anything. Those are just awful and inexcusable.
Right. And like boneheaded plays that you expect from a rookie, right? That you don't expect from, I think, our expectation of Jordan Love, which is more of like he sat behind Rodgers for 3 years. He should know that he can't make that throw, right? So
I'd like to think that he knows he can't make that throw, but I guess if he's got to make 1 or 2 of them, fine. Yeah.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is we treat him like a 5th year player when he's got 2 years worth of experience, right? At least actual in-game experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes the big boy gloves come out a little bit with him when maybe they're not always warranted. Now, don't get me wrong. He set the expectations for himself with the play down the stretch last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
He acted like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and now he gets treated like one, or he's expected to play
he's paid like one,
so,
which I think is
he's also paid one.
I think that's a result of the way the league works as much as, anything else, but you can't ignore it.
Right. But then, you have to have the same, you do the same thing with Trevor Lawrence then if you're going to do the paid by route, right? So, why are the Jaguars 2-7? That's a terrible take. I'm sorry. But, I'm just saying that, like, you move forward, you get Jordan Love healthy, you get them to a point where I think the only 2 games that we got to see Jordan Love truly healthy this year were Philadelphia and the Arizona Cardinals game, and I think he looked fantastic in both, with the exception of, one or two judgment calls that I think maybe, hopefully this year he puts that stuff behind him, but definitely in the following years, I think that those are plays that Jordan Love no longer makes, and by that I mean the really bad boneheaded decision making. At least that's the hope, right? As Packer fans, that's the hope.
Well, it's got to be. You're talking on a macro level, Darnell. It's a good call. Appreciate it. That over the next year or two, right, he starts to work those out, and I hope he works it out over the bye. Like, I'm not asking him to become prime Peyton Manning over these next 2 weeks. I'm asking him to think about two of the worst interceptions I've ever seen a quarterback throw at the two worst times you could ever throw it on the two worst spots on the field you could throw it. I'm asking for him to just think about that during the bye. Where it's just like, okay, I can't just give away the ball because I'm about to get sacked, because I'm about to go down. You know what I mean? I actually think that this bye is positioned decently well. I kind of like that they had a stinker going into the bye. Good. Sit with it. Think about it. Good. Excellent. Like, stew on it. Keep that in your mind, and I'm going to poke a little fun at Rodgers here, and I'm going to complain about Rodgers a little bit. I don't mean to always take everything back to Rodgers. Sometimes, the things that would bug me with Rodgers is, well, we got to get away over the bye, not think about football. Got to go away in the offseason, completely get away. Like, no, if you come up short, I want you thinking about it. You know what I mean? I want you attacking it. I want you rolling around in bed at night, staying awake, thinking about how you let a game get away because of this, that, or the other thing. I know it's probably not best for a player's mental health, but you think Brady's the most mentally healthy person in the world? No, he's a psychopath. And I think he's doing okay, too. Look at him. He's got that glow. Plastic surgery glow. I like him on TV. I'm not making fun of Brady, but over these 2 weeks, I want them sitting and stewing on this and thinking about it. And I want them to come ready to basically beat the balls off the Bears coming out of the bye. It's the hope, at least. Let's take a 2-minute break. If you're on hold, stay there. I promise I'll get to you the instant we're back from this break, but I want to stay ahead of schedule because my Clemens coming up at 5:30. I just want to keep everything nice and neat and tidy and organized for the next 40 minutes or so. 608-321-1670. More of your calls next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, Mike Clemens in 10 minutes. Got a couple more minutes, a couple opportunities to get your call in, couple empty phone lines too if you want to grab them. 608-321-1670, talking about the Packers and kind of taking stock, right, during the bye week. Which parts of this team have exceeded your expectations? Which players or parts of this team have come up short? And, maybe what did you nail? It's like, no, this is what I expected, and this is what we got. And I was right on. 608-321-1670. Back to your phone calls as promised. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
John in Cornell. What's going on, John?
Not a whole lot. I'm calling pretty often. It's good. You got good subjects.
I like it. Well, I appreciate that.
Yes. So okay, we everybody's talking about Jordan Love's boneheaded throws, and which I'm not denying that they were. But this is my question: is okay. If he throws boneheaded throws, that's true. But how many times did Brett Favre do that? Brett Favre did it. I was thinking about it when you were talking about it. I'm like, Brett Favre did it against the Giants in the NFC Championship. He threw the interception, and they lost the game, and the Giants went to the Super Bowl. I mean, Brett Favre did it. He was a gunslinger. He wasn't, but would you give him the ball when there was, 2 minutes left in the game and drive down the field and score? Absolutely. Obviously Jordan Love doesn't have that trust yet, but that was my thought.
So, and it's not a bad thought. And John, I got a couple other callers I want to get to, so I want to be quick here. And I'm not beating up on the point that you just made. I appreciate you calling, and I just selfishly love hanging with a caller from Cornell, which is incredible. For all the people who reference Favre, well, Favre did it. Okay, and what's the point? Is your point, well, you can win throwing a lot of picks. All right, you could. Most people would also say that Favre should have probably won more and they should have won more playoff games. John, in the same breath, you're like, well, Favre did it. He did it against the Giants in 2008. Yeah, and that's why they lost. And Favre, at that point, had won multiple MVPs. He won 3 of them in a row. So the Favre bench is great. Okay, so Favre threw picks. And what's the point? Like, I need, and John, maybe your point is, maybe the point that you're trying to make is you can win, besides the picks. It's easier to win without the picks, though. I'd still prefer not the picks to the picks. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello? All right, I'm going to put you on hold. We'll come back if you're still there. Wisco Sports Show. Next line. Who's this?
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hey, this is Ben, first-time caller.
Ben?
Yeah, Benjamin.
Ben, that's excellent. I don't think we have another Ben, so this is great. You've planted your flag now.
Nice. 53 North.
Hell yeah. Oh, that's where I'd want to plant my flag, too. Where are you calling from?
I'm on my way to Spooner right now, just leaving Eau Claire.
Spooner blows. I do love that for you. That is excellent. Well, what do you want to talk? Packers?
Yeah, Packers. I'm really stoked with the team. Super excited about our potential, but pretty disappointed with the receiving group right now. Seems like too many drops, too many mistakes. And what is going on with our return game as far as punt coverage?
Jaden Reed on Sunday kind of looked like he was just guessing. Like he fair caught a ball and then instantly looked mad at himself. And I'd rather have him fair catch and rather be safe than sorry, but it does look like he's trying to kind of get his arms around the thing right now, to your point.
Well, yeah, they're fair catching and there's nobody even around them.
Yeah. I don't want to say he's got the yips, but I think they're in their own head a little bit. And if the worst case scenario is fair catch balls and give up, 10 yards of potential return, but secure the possession, I guess that's fine. But you're definitely right, Ben.
Is Reed the guy that we want back there anyway? I mean, he's got the dropsies too. Isn't there somebody, I don't know, maybe a bench guy that can prove himself out there.
What's Pat Lee up to? Is he doing anything? Why is there no Pat Lees anymore? Why is there not like a fifth corner on the roster who can do it? I feel like the Packers used to be swimming in those types of guys.
Yeah, get some depth on the bench that just specializes in return game or special teams.
I don't know. The special teams has kind of gone down my list. You're the first person who's come out, Ben, and clearly said, I'm disappointed in the receiving core. I think they've been solid and they've all had their moments. No members of this receiving core have really exploded, been like, wow. And I kind of wanted that to be Christian Watson. Hasn't really happened. I guess Reed's been great, but he's also had some big drops in significant moments too.
Yeah, does Love not trust Watson? Because he's supposed to be the superstar.
I don't know. It seems like every time we all agree, well, Watson needs to be more involved. And then you try to get him the ball more and the ball goes into triple coverage and it leads to interceptions and Christian Watson almost ending up in an ambulance.
Yeah.
It's not funny. I mean, I guess it's kind of funny, but I to your point, by the way, Ben, Dontavian Wicks is second in the NFL in drops. Jaden Reed is third and Romeo Dobbs is eighth. Like,
maybe sit Wicks for a while and play some more Bull Melton.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. And Ben, I appreciate it. Call back sometime. I just got to get to Mike Clemens. Thank you. And enjoy your drive up north. I'm down with that. Wicks can get open. He can't really do anything else. And I get, well, you want to keep going back to the guy. You want to keep going to that. I get it. But when you're playing the Vikings and the Lions, you just can't afford to put balls on the ground. You can't afford it. And he'll get his opportunities throughout the year. But I'm at this moment in time, I do want to tap the brakes on creating opportunities to get him the ball. We don't need to script up that game plan. All right, one more call. I'm a sucker. Right before we get to Mike, we got 60 seconds. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, this is Squeebs. First time, medium time.
Squeed?
Squeebs,
of course. How did I not hear that clearly the first time? What's going on?
The farm and lettuce thing the other day. I always talk to my buddies about that and finally found the name of it. Other thing.
Yes.
Punt on Sunday. There was a punch, or when we were playing the Lions, I saw Edgerrin Cooper as the gunner. I thought that was fascinating. Loved it. Knew Jarrett Culver. Hanging up and listening. Love it. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yeah, you as well. I didn't see Edgerrin Cooper as a gunner. It makes sense. He's got the speed. I need to know. I see Bukowski having conniptions online about this, although that's not nothing out of the ordinary. Edgerrin Cooper isn't really playing as much at linebacker. And a couple weeks ago, Matt LaFleur was like, well, he's still learning the playbook and getting caught up. And I get that, but it's week 9. It's like, still, the dude flashes every time he's out there. I would like to see him play a little bit more. And if not, I would like to at least know why. And I think that will become a post-by theme if he's not playing and still looking really impressive. He's playing a good amount, but he's not overwhelmingly getting snaps over other linebackers who, to my eye, haven't been as good. Let's take a break. Mike Clemens going to join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Right off the jump, we get a personal foul, whatever they called on Keyshawn, the 15-yarder, which is totally unacceptable. And then we had they have their first drive. It's 4th and goal on the 5-yard line. We jump off sides.
Yeah, man, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, a lot of momentum killers, a lot of drive killers. And that's just on us, man. I feel like, we've been getting away with a lot of it because we've been kind of masking it with the wins. But when you play a good team, man, all the little things catch up to you.
That's Matt LaFleur and Josh Jacobs, both coming out of Sunday's loss to the Vikings, or the Lions. Their second divisional loss, the first being to the Vikings. And Xavier McKinney voiced some displeasure, too. He's like, man, we can't come out and play this way against our divisional foes. The comment from Josh Jacobs saying, hey, we've gotten away with a lot of this because we've been winning games like the Jacksonville game or the Texans game. And that comment jumped out to me as well. It jumped out to Mike Clemens, who picked it out and wanted to play it here. And Mike joins us now. Mike, you know why that comment from Josh Jacobs jumps out to me is because 2 weeks ago after the Jacksonville game, Tucker Kraft said something similar. He said after the Jaguars win, he said, we need to start taking accountability for some of these things. And he said that after a win, Mike. You don't normally hear players say things like that after a win. So this is a continuation of a theme that we've heard even after wins for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And, in Josh Jacobs, you get a fresh perspective from a free agent, that's coming in from Vegas and appreciates that he's on a team with 6-3 and a quarterback and Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur and all those kinds of things, as opposed to, with the Raiders firing Luke Getsy, the quarterback coach, and somebody else this past week out in Vegas, just another turnover dumpster fire, unfortunately, for the Raiders franchise. But I thought that really stood out. Josh Jacobs, who said, well, I'm out of here. I'm going to take my bye week. And we're building a house in Miami, and I want to be with my kid. People that have guys that have youngsters, 3, 4 years old. I want to spend time with them. Christian Watson's got a nephew he wants to spend time with. And the other thing they all said, including Tucker Kraft, you mentioned there. So what are you going to do with this week? Well, first I got to get my body back.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jaguars game, the last couple of games, and, the 8-9 weeks of NFL football, and you need a break. You need a break. You got to, it gets to be longer every week as the season wears on before, you're not out there on Sunday morning and you got to do warm-ups because you got to get through stiffness and pain and aches and get the blood flowing and feel like you're ready to get hit again and again. And it gets even worse, the older you are. I'll never forget the last game Favre played as a Viking for Minnesota. You know that where that visitors media interview room is, where they have the coach and the quarterback from the opposing team will speak. Maybe a star player. A couple hours before the game, I was going there because we set up recording equipment in there so that we can we cover both locker rooms, both podiums, and we have all that those clips to go over to play back on the radio, on the post game show or whatever. And I get in there 2 or 3 hours before the game. And there's Brett. They're using the interview room, the Vikings, because they've run out of room in the locker room. They're using the interview room pregame to set up a portable table. And there's a trainer, man, and his tall guy in his 60s with gray hair, warming up Brett Favre on the table, working out these kinks. And, you forget about that. What does it take to get these guys on the field, especially 36, 37, 38-year-old, 40-year-old quarterbacks now like Rodgers? And they got to get a full body massage just to get out there for pregame warm-ups, just to get ready to do this again. That's how tough the sport can be for these guys.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a big part of this week. Just relax, get a lot of sleep, right? Go throughout your day without needing to go from practice to meeting. Just exist for a week and let your body kind of catch up. And that's the human element, the element that we don't often think about.
A mental break too.
Yeah, totally.
Break too.
Right? Because they're being drilled constantly. Hey, coming up on Sunday, we got this. It's Bears week. It's you're always just being bombarded with messages. So mentally, for a whole week to just sit back and to not be coached and to not be commanded constantly, you need that mental break too.
I thought there was a strong message from Matt LaFleur, though. Before the guys left, he went to his position coaches. They went to their players for, a brief little exit interview for the week. But to say, okay, here's the one thing on your game you need to work on, whether it's false start penalties or something in the technique or, these certain kinds of plays where you have to pull and block. I want you to think about that or look a film of that or, review the things that we've talked about, work, improve on that one aspect of your game before we get back in here on Sunday or Monday to prepare for going down to Chicago and taking on the Bears. And I think that was a pretty smart thing to do. I mean, he's encouraging them to take their physical and mental break for the next 4 or 5 days. But also, here's the one thing to be thinking about in terms of football. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. Do you want the Preston Smith clip? I'm sorry. Am I missing one here?
No. I'm just talking
gotcha.
just talking about, what these players should be doing on their bye week.
No, 100%. And it's funny because I'm so used to producing and running these interviews with you and Bill. I'm like, Mike just set up something perfectly. What am I missing here? No, 100%. And something that I've mentioned, Mike, and this is going to sound inconsiderate, or I guess very much a fan, right? Like I'm thinking about these guys as football players and not as humans here. But I'm kind of okay with the fact that they have a bye this week after playing a stinker. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they probably go into the bye thinking, nuts. And that's going to sit with them a little bit. And I think maybe that fires up some extra motivation to come back and to work out some of those kinks and to be a better team in the second half. And also, you get another crack at a divisional opponent coming out of the bye. And their 2 worst games have been against the Lions and the Vikings. They still have yet to notch a division win.
Yeah, and, you played a Texans team that was depleted on their defense. But still, a strong offense. You came up with a good game plan for them, and you were able to come off with a, walk-off field goal at home against the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go down to Jacksonville, and you beat a desperate team again, at the end of the game. But then you lose in the rain, to the Lions. And I don't know now. There's not a better team in the NFC than the one you just played. And so that's probably your measuring stick. They're certainly playing better than the 49ers out without McCaffrey, and that's going to be your next game after you go to Chicago. Then you got to play the 49ers at home, and you host the Dolphins on a short turnaround on Thanksgiving night. So, you do have to get into a mindset like, well, what do we need to improve this team in order to make a run at the NFC conference title this week or this November and December. So yeah, to talk about the other headline is a couple hours before Monday night we got a thing. Hey, Brian Gutekunst is going to talk at 4:30 tomorrow. Like, oh, okay. Now there's one time that we anticipate him talking to us. That was interesting that he picked that time, but it's okay. It's a bye week, so we can review the season. But sure enough, they must have been working the phones a little bit, but Goody sort of made it sound like it was the Pittsburgh Steelers that called the Packers on Tuesday after probably the Steelers got their first trade done for the wide receiver to say, okay, let's talk about Preston Smith. And Goody said, oh, yeah, okay, can we at least get a 7th round pick, and will you pick up his contract?
Yeah.
So, people seeming to miss that on social media. The Steelers are absorbing this 32-year-old linebacker's contract, at least for the rest of this season.
And it's not nothing. It's not like it's $1 million rental for the rest of the year. There's years left on this thing.
Yeah, well, in next year it goes up to 17 or 18 if the reports are correct.
Yeah.
Just crazy. And then that could be also renegotiated, I suppose. But this was the interesting, compelling drama is that Preston Smith arrives in Pittsburgh the next day. He's got his Steelers practice jersey on, his short shoulder pads. They bring him off the field to a little press conference. And he was asked, why did you get traded from Green Bay? And what's your reaction to being traded here to the Steelers?
To be honest, a few weeks ago, I requested a trade. I didn't feel like I was being useful in the system, and it wasn't catering to my play style. And moving forward, like I wasn't surprised when I got the call. It's like, I got what I asked for, and I'm at a great place with some great teammates. And, I'm excited for a new start, and I'm excited for the rest of this journey for this season.
I don't blame him for asking for a trade. And when Brian Gutekunst learned that Preston Smith wanted out, I can't imagine he was crestfallen. It's like, okay, so I have an opportunity to move this money, get a look at some younger guys. It's very clear how important youth is to Brian Gutekunst. I think this is a win all around, and it seems as though Preston Smith went about it the right way. I didn't notice anything on the field. It's not like he made a stink on social media with some cryptic Instagram story or anything like that. I think this is good for all parties involved, don't you?
Yeah, and Gutekunst said Tuesday night, it's at least 3 times. Well, it gives us a chance to look at younger players.
Yeah.
So, you replace 32 years old with 22, 23, 24. You guys moving into now the prime of their career into their mid-20s. He's also knocking on the podium, the wood of the podium there.
Yeah.
Saying, well, so far, overall, we've been pretty healthy at that position. So I feel good about JJ Enagbari, getting more of those snaps. Lucas Van Ness now having to step up. And they were getting Jeff Hafley was increasing their productivity, their snaps on the field. Preston, who had to line up now off a right tackle, put his hand in the ground like a defensive end when he's, as he's said, I played my whole career as a stand-up outside linebacker. That's who I am. That's the way I operate.
Yep.
And this, bending over and putting my hand in the ground thing. And so he talked about why he's happy to be back in a 3-4 defense now in Pittsburgh.
It's just what I've been playing in the last 9 years of my career. Into this past season is what I was comfortable playing in and what I got used to playing in the previous 9 seasons. We switched to a 4-3 due to the new coordinator, and it was a good system, but things just worked out the way they worked out.
Man, Preston Smith, and I know I don't know your media experiences with him. I know he always used to do his interviews with Zadarius Smith. And maybe we already talked about this, Mike. You'll have to refresh me. We could have discussed this on Tuesday. I don't know. But when they signed him in 2019, I didn't know much about him. I didn't know much about him or Zadarius. I wasn't covering the team. I wasn't doing radio at the level back then that I was now. I was on the air, but I probably wasn't as dialed in. For him to have the last however many years that would have been 5 years as a Packer, productive, available, I can't imagine the Packers could have asked for much more. And now for him to go somewhere else, a team that's very much going for it. They traded for wide receiver too, scheme that fits. I don't know. I'm happy for him. I'm pulling for him. And he had a very, very good career as a Green Bay Packer.
Most important is how available Preston Smith
Yes.
And coming out of Washington, to me, when I heard Preston Smith, instantly like, oh no, there's a guy. I didn't know that much about Za'Darius because he was on, came from a team with so much depth in Baltimore that it wasn't until he got there into the locker room, and he actually ended up being the alpha dog of those two, just in terms of their personalities and the way they, carried themselves around the locker room. And now Za'Darius goes from the Vikings to the Browns, and now traded the other day, on the same day as Preston, Za'Darius will be with the Lions because, they're shorthanded in terms of injury. And same thing with the Steelers. Nick Herbig, the former Badgers, dealing with a severe hamstring injury right now. So Preston comes in with experience and can help in the rotation behind TJ Watt. So, it's all good like that. But, I also know these guys, they're trying to extend their careers so they can keep the money coming in, and they love playing football. And maybe Za'Darius thinks he's got a better shot at that now with the Steelers than the youth movement that's constantly going on in Green Bay. They do want to win Super Bowl rings. And I'm sure part of this is tough for Preston to say, I think I got a better chance at a ring in Green Bay and Jordan Love than with Russell Wilson and what the Steelers are cooking right now. But whatever. Number one, if he's looking out for himself and his family, a business move to Pittsburgh is pretty good deal.
Yeah, and I was just going to follow up. It's not like he got traded to the Raiders or the Panthers. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a good organization with a competitive. They know what the heck they're doing. He's not going to a complete and total. Maybe the Packers have a slightly better chance, and I would chalk that up mostly to the Steelers just being in a conference with Patrick Mahomes. Honestly. And I think the Packers are a little better, and I think Jordan Love has the potential to go on a run. But then again, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl, and he's played in 2. That's not something that you can say about Jordan Love, so maybe we shouldn't undersell the Steelers' chances.
No, they're hot right now, but anybody's got to try and get past Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on that side of the ledger.
So can I ask you one thing before I let you go? We got about 2 minutes here. We've been talking about expectations, what way this team has surprised us and let us down. Is there one thing for good or for bad, or maybe not good or bad, one thing that you did not see coming this season going into the year and now you're watching unfold 9 weeks in?
I never knew that Xavier McKinney was going to be that good. 6 interceptions every week. And the way, he just seems to know where the ball is going if you throw it over the middle. And there's no way I thought he could be that good, especially to start. But the one thing that I started getting worried about and talking about on the shows a couple of weeks ago is my biggest concern now coming back is offensive line.
Yeah.
Depth there, execution there. It's a head scratcher why it's not performing better. This Josh Myers left wrist injury, is he going to be back in time for a Bears game? Because, Alton Jenkins seemed to be, a little rusty at that situation. And I question what they've got for backups if someone gets hurt, like a Zach Tom. This Kadeem Telford, 6'7", big dude, but kind of green. And Andre Dillard, the free agent, 6-year veteran, is not exactly, blowing them away. And if you want to beat the Detroit Lions, you got to have an offensive line as good as theirs to get anywhere.
Well, and I guess the silver lining in that concern is most other teams in the NFL would probably have that same concern.
Right.
And that's just this league, right? The margins are so thin. Depth on a lot of these rosters is so thin, and it takes luck to go on these runs. So
wow.
I appreciate that. I know we're going to talk to you one more time this bye week on Bill's show tomorrow to wrap things up in the 1 o'clock hour. So looking forward to that. Thank you for the time, Mike. I appreciate it.
Talk to you guys there.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Mike Clemens, brought to us by the Bay Motel in Green Bay, South Military Avenue, baymotelgreenbay.com to book, whether it's for a Packer game or maybe you're not going to a game. Maybe you're going to Green Bay to tour Lambeau in the off season, or maybe you're going on a visit. Who knows? You can go to Green Bay for lots of reasons. baymotelgreenbay.com. Call or, hit them up with any questions or concerns that you might have. They can help you out. One more segment, couple minutes. We'll come back and then turn things over to Thorson in Heilbronn. Ebo and Zach will be live at Monks and Sun Prairie. Looking forward to that program this evening. They'll keep it going. We'll wrap up this show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The Wisco Sports Show, last couple minutes, turn things over to Thorson in Heilbronn. I'd say Zach and Ebo, but it's different. It's a different show. Live at Monk's in Sun Prairie. Perfect spot to go have a nice cold beer. I would always say, if we're going to a bar for one, let's go to Monk's for one. But that doesn't mean you're limited to one beer. One good time. Food specials as well. Perfect place to watch the Bucks, the Badgers, or Thursday Night Football. This Thursday Night Football game should be excellent. And even if it's not excellent, at least it's like between two good teams. That's the thing. Like, would you rather watch an ugly game between the Ravens and the Bengals or a back and forth masterpiece between the Raiders and the Panthers? Like, I'd rather watch the crummy game between the two good teams. The hope, of course, is it's both. It's two good teams and it's a great game. But it's very rare on Thursday night we get a matchup like this. So very much looking forward to that tonight. Tomorrow's show, we're going to have Arif Hassan, who's covered the NFL for a long time, been at The Athletic. He most centrally, I think, covers the Vikings, but bounces around quite a bit. He's got an excellent Substack and has contributed to the show before. Very sharp, very smart. Also loves to make fun of Jordan Love. And Christian Watson, most notably, for going to schools like Utah State and North Dakota State. But however, South Dakota State for Tucker Kraft is fine. I don't know how he feels about South Dakota. South Dakota versus South Dakota State, very different. As is Montana and Montana State. The Badgers host Montana State. The Cats, not the Grizz, the Bobcats tonight. And I'm just excited to have Nolan Winter and John Tanji playing basketball on my TV. Although I think this is on Big Ten Plus. I couldn't find a stream on Stream East. It was too obscure, Holy Cross, Wisconsin. Even the people who run Stream East are like, dude, go outside and touch grass. So I'll listen to probably most of the game on the radio tonight. But I draw the line at Big Ten Plus. And I'm the guy that tells you to get cable. And everyone's like, I haven't watched the Brewers since 2015 because I had them on YouTube TV or Hulu Live, and then they got rid of the Bally's. It's like, okay, but they didn't get rid of it last month. Like, you've had the better part of half a decade now to seek other options, and you just haven't, which is why I'm always like, get cable. Just get cable. You get the RSNs, you get ESPN, you get TNT, you get all the stations that you need for all the sports. I'm also the guy that just tells you to get Peacock. It's a good streaming service with lots of good content, and there's a lot of sports on Peacock. Even I draw the line at Big Ten Plus. I'm just like, you know what? No, I'm not getting that. Like, this is a grift, respectfully. Now, if the Badgers streamed it and they charged you a la carte, and it's like, hey, we're going to charge you $10 to watch this game, and some of the proceeds will go to, getting Luke Fickell or, Mike Tressel, the player that they need to not get steamrolled by Iowa, then maybe I'd consider it if the school put it on. Big Ten Plus, respectfully, no. I'll listen on the radio, or if the internet allows, I'll find a creative alternative way to stream. Now, Thorson would never. Thorson is nothing but journalistic integrity. He'll be co-hosting with Zach at Monks and Sun Prairie starting in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned for that. The rest of you, I will talk to you tomorrow at 4. Never miss a Friday show.